Hello,
It,
everyone.
sorry.
I am Whitney Guilford. I am the Communications Media Manager at the NCNW. I will be handling all of your technical needs tonight. And we have a wonderful webinar. Miss Shara Denton is going to tell you more about it. Go ahead, Miss Shara.
Sorry about that. Good evening. Again, I'm Shara Denton. I'm the National Chair for the Health Equity Committee for the National Council of Negro Women. And this is one of several of our webinars for HEC Committee, which is called Surviving and Thriving from Breast Cancer. And we have three phenomenal speakers tonight that will discuss their own experiences and their expertise in breast cancer. We have noticed with this particular health equity focus that we've received a lot of positive feedback and interest from our members, and we want to continue to provide education and resources for our members for prevention and awareness with breast cancer. Tonight's speakers are Mr. Larry Blackman, who is the CEO of the Blackman Organization, Dr. Nia Rashad, CEO of the Plus Smile Center, and Dr. Javetta Stanford, who is a clinical research associate for pharmaceutical product development. At this time, I will let them introduce themselves and discuss their expertise and experience with breast cancer awareness. Thank you.
Well, I guess I go first, since we're going by alphabetical order, and Mr. Blackman, you referred to the women, right? Well, anyway, thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Dr. Nia Rashad. It's a new name for many of you. I used to be Dr. Farrell Williams. So a lot has changed in my life over the course of the past few months, and I'm grateful. So I am a dentist by trade. I am the CEO and proud owner of the Affordable Dentures and Implants in Bethlehem. It's a 5-chair state-of-the-art dental center, and I primarily focus on full mouth rehabilitation with implants and prosthetic dentures. I'm a member of the Greater Pocono chapter section of NCNW, and currently I serve as the second vice president of membership for Pennsylvania State. I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta. I'm the chartering president of the East Pocono chapter here in the Poconos, and I am also the chartering president of the Greater Pocono chapter of Jack and Jill. So I've been really busy, and to think that in 2016, the date was October 6th of 2016, my life changed forever. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I went in for a regular mammogram after feeling something that just did not feel right on my left breast. It did not feel like the lump, the quote unquote lump that everyone tells you about. You know, if you suspect or feel a lump in your breast, then you should have it checked out. It didn't feel like that at all. I was working out constantly every day, going to the gym, and I thought I was developing muscles. And I could feel like maybe a fibrous, leathery feeling on one of my, on my left breast. And when I went in to get my mammogram, lo and behold, it came back with this, the mammogram itself, they show you the picture. And there was this splatter of radiopaque spots on my radiograph. And I am a dentist by trade, so I do know how to interpret x-rays all of a sudden. All I could, you know, my eyes was like, whoa, 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 what is that? And, you know, they downplay and say, oh, it's probably nothing. It looks like calcifications. But what I do remember is they weren't there the year before. So I go through all of this extensive testing and sonograms and biopsy, and yes, I was diagnosed with DCIS and invasive breast cancer, stage 2. And of course, I had the worst kind of it all, triple negative. And that was enough to scare me to death without the cancer diagnosis. So when I did go for this diagnosis, I brought my cousin with me. We're more like brother and sister. And as soon as I got the diagnosis, I just kind of blacked out and didn't hear anything else. The doctor actually sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher, and all I could hear was womp, womp, womp. Luckily, my cousin was there. He wrote down everything, and it took me a couple of days to kind of process this. I kind of died in those 48 hours before I decided that, no, I'm going to live. And I started conducting my own research. What I found out was that if I had stayed at the Veterans Hospital where I was initially diagnosed, I probably would have been dead. So right away, I opted to go to a cancer specialty place, which was Sloan Kettering in New York. I do live in the Poconos, however. I made the trip to Sloan Kettering, and sure enough, they diagnosed me and told me I need to start treatment right away. But just being a soldier that I am, I was like, wait a minute, I have an opportunity to be in the Veterans Day Parade. I'm the Grand Marshal. Surely I can wait an extra day or a week. They're like, yes, go do your parade and come back. And so I did do that parade. And once I finished, I came in, and sure enough, the chemotherapy was to start. And I went through 9 rounds of the most invasive and the most, I don't know, in terms of strength, it was one of the stronger type of chemotherapy in which they termed it the devil's blood. And anytime they call something the devil's blood, it can't be good. So it was adrenomycin, I believe it was. And they told me I would have to do this every 2 weeks. And I went through 9 rounds of it. And then I did another type of chemotherapy, and it nearly wiped me out. I cannot remember the name of it. Something plaques, something, I cannot remember the name. And I went through a round of that as well. And that was enough to kind of knock me down. But one thing for sure was when I did go to chemotherapy, my tumor reduced in half the size with just 2 treatments. When I was going through chemotherapy, naturally, everyone comes out of the woodworks and tries to advise you. But what I tell people is when you're going through this, you're going through by yourself. You need to make these decisions as to whether or not you're going to do chemotherapy all by yourself. Because when you're there, it's easy for someone to say, oh, don't do that, because they don't know exactly what you're going through and what the things you have to lose. So I opted to do chemotherapy because after my research, that was the only thing that was going to save me. And yes, I opted to change my diet. I eliminated all sugar from my diet. And sugar seems to be a culprit of many diseases. And when you research and find out that a cancer cell has 5 receptors just for sugar, it has to be a bad thing. So I eliminated all sugar from my diet. I even stopped eating meat for a while. I mean, I did so many drastic changes in addition to the chemotherapy. I figured something had to work because I'm here and it's 6 years later and I am cancer free. I also did 6 whole weeks of radiation therapy. I've had a double mastectomy because the lump consumed half of one breast. However, I had some other nodules in the other breast that I was told could transmutate into the same thing. And all I knew is that I'm in for the fight of my life. And as a result of that, I could only fight this fight one time, you know, and I need to just go all in. So I asked for the double mastectomy. So they did the double mastectomy and they gave me expanders. I actually was so through with breasts. I was like, I don't even want breasts anymore. But luckily, my plastic surgeon said, nope, you're a young woman, you're going to need breasts. I opted not to have them, but he said, nope, you're going to thank me one day. You're just not thinking straight. So I started construction. I got the mastectomy and construction at the same surgery, one of 3 surgeries. Then I continued, I went back to chemotherapy because they actually switched gears. I couldn't do any more chemotherapy because my white blood cell count could not achieve normal levels after a while. And so they said, let's just go get the tumor. He's small, we can get him now, we can get the whole thing. We did that, we put the expanders in, and then we resumed chemotherapy to complete it at the end, till the end. Then the radiation started. That was 6 weeks. I got through the entire 6 weeks without getting massive burns because my research showed me that the medicine they told me to use, the cream, would cause blisters instead of help the blisters. So, you know, just being the natural researcher that I am and erring on the side of the more natural skincare regimen, I was able to get through the radiation without massive burns. When that completed, I went back to finish the reconstruction project. And then I started another oral form of chemotherapy that lasted another several weeks. What everyone told me about triple negative breast cancer, it's supposed to be the worst one on the market. I just thank God that I was in a place where I could receive the proper advice and the proper health regimen and the proper care and support so that I could be here today and possibly say something that might change someone else's mind about what it is they need to do to take care of themselves. And here I am 6 years later. It took all 6 of those years to reinvent myself. And I'm constantly evolving as a result. Whereas I even, when the cancer was removed from my life, I was even divorced during the same time. So, you know, that was hard too. But as it was revealed to me in my own dreams, it just like, it said, God wants you to get rid of all cancer in your life. I was able to use that and grow from it. And sure enough, again, 6 years later, I'm new, I'm improved, and I'm learning and reinventing me every day. That's all. I mean, in fact, I just recently got married, which is a tremendous accomplishment for me, considering that once you lose all of your breasts, you don't even know how to date anymore. It's like, what do you tell someone? Hi, my name is Nia. I don't have any real breasts. So, you know, all of that stuff gets worked out over time. And you get to figure that out as you go and grow along. That's all I can say right now.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rashad, for sharing your story, and thank you. Well, congratulations on your marriage as well. After the next 2 speakers speak, we will have some Q&A session, and we will talk more about. I'll probably ask you all if, well, I'll ask you all maybe if there was any misconceptions about your diagnosis that maybe you didn't realize until after you start going through what you were going through. But before we get to that, I will let Dr. Stanford, Javetta Stanford, speak now.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Javetta Stanford. As Ms. Shara had mentioned, I am a clinical research associate for a company. It's actually called PPD. It's the shortened version. We're a company of Thermo Fisher Scientific. I also teach clinical research courses at Florida State Community College here in Jacksonville, Florida. My breast cancer journey began on October the 13th, 2021. I had recently joined PPD as a clinical research associate, which is a travel position, a position that I had worked so hard to get nearly 6 years to achieve getting into this role, because it's a very coveted sort of position, a very difficult field to get into. And so probably 6 months into the new job, prior to that, sort of, I'll give you just a little bit of background. I was also a caretaker for my then 81-year-old mother, and also a single parent raising a middle school teenager who also was heavily involved in competitive all-star cheer, which required our travel just about every weekend, practice 2 and 3 times a week, in addition to, working and traveling. So I was stretched pretty thin. A lot of times I would just sort of neglect my own needs to take care of my family, take care of my mother. And eventually my mother moved with another relative. And I had an appointment for a mammogram that my primary care had advised during my annual checkup. And I was like, oh, I don't have time to do it. We've got cheer competition, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm good. I'm still young. I can skip it this year and get it next year. But I started to feel this lump in my left breast, and I didn't put too much weight into it because there are other members of my family that have had mammograms, and they were told that they had dense breast tissue. And so I didn't think a whole lot of it. Long story short, I went to my primary and they were concerned, and they ordered a diagnostic mammogram, which came back abnormal. And I had to have a biopsy. And on one afternoon, and the crazy thing is that I was really not thinking that it was going to be anything bad, to the point where I told my provider, I was like, well, just call me once you get the pathology report back to tell me, what it is. Because I'm thinking when I had the biopsy, the physician was like, oh, it looks like it could be some sort of infection. And I was like, oh, okay, it's an infection, take some antibiotics and clear it up, and it's no big deal. And so I'm thinking that it's not a big deal. And so much so that someone from my provider's office had called earlier in the week and said, oh, your results came back negative. And I was like, okay. But she was misinterpreting the results. So there's a set of results that just talk about the fact that the procedure was performed, and they, what exactly they did in the procedure, but not actually, the diagnostic portion of the report. That was what was available. And so with her reading that, and she didn't read any formal diagnosis, the office staff member said, oh, your results are negative. There's nothing in here. And so I didn't think anything of it. I went on my trip for work. So then one afternoon, I'm at work in a clinic, And I got a phone call from my provider, and she told me that my results had came back positive. And I had walked to the bathroom to talk with her, and I just fell apart right then and there. I didn't know what to do. I called a couple of my close friends, and they prayed with me, and they were like, okay, we're gonna pray with you. We need you to pull it together so you can finish your work day and call us when you get back to your hotel room. And so one of my very dear friends, she's a physician, and she called me. She was one of the people that I had called, and because I actually kept calling her, and she stepped away from seeing patients when I called her, because she figured that it had to be some sort of emergency if I was just calling her back to back. And so that evening, she was like, have you read the pathology report? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, do you want to read it? And I was like, I can't. And so I emailed her the pathology report, and she read through the report with me. And I think I was devastated. I was mad. I was angry. I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. No one in my family has a history of breast cancer. And so I just could not understand how I ended up with breast cancer. So as Dr. Rashad had shared, that during this journey, one thing that I learned is that you have to be your own advocate. You can't listen to what other people say. You have to know for yourself. So with the background in research myself, I began researching, and my primary care had recommended me to go to this cancer specialist, and it just didn't feel right. The doctor told me that I wasn't going to need chemotherapy, that I would just have the surgery that would remove the tumor. It was so small, I'd have some radiation and I'd be good. And when I met with the surgeon, again, another experience that Dr. Rashad shared, just listening to her, her bedside manner was zero. And some of the things that she was saying were just sort of jarring, to the point where she would say those things and I would just completely shut down, because I didn't hear anything beyond sort of the jarring information that she said to me. And so I was just like, no, I don't feel good about this surgeon. I'm going to look for a different surgeon. So I ended up transferring my care to MD Anderson, Baptist MD Anderson here in Jacksonville. They're affiliated with MD Anderson in Houston, which is a nationally and internationally recognized cancer hospital. And the surgeon, I was just explaining to her, kind of how things have been going. And she said, well, I just want to run a few more tests. She's like, do you mind if I run these additional tests? And I said, no. And so she ran some, various scans of my brain, scans of my bone, abdominal scans. And one of the scans came back with problematic. And what was sort of bizarre is that the results were released in my patient portal on Thanksgiving. And typically they won't, their providers don't release them before they read them. And I guess maybe someone didn't think about it. So on Thanksgiving Day, I had this report that I read that there was 3 suspicious masses on my liver. And I immediately called and left messages for the doctor to call me back on that Monday. They, scheduled me for biopsies, and on December the 16th, again, while at work, was at a site visit in New York, and my doctor called and she was like, I need to speak with you immediately. She's like, I need to speak with you immediately. We need to do a Zoom visit. It's like, okay, fine. And she told me that they confirmed that the masses on my liver were cancerous, and I was then advanced to metastatic breast cancer and immediately thrust into stage 4 breast cancer. So that immediately canceled my planned surgery, and I had to go straight into chemotherapy. The tumor that was on my liver was twice the size of the tumor that was in my breast. And I literally was just a mess, literally a mess. Thankfully, when I was at the site visit in New York, I have family there. And so after the visit, I was able to go and spend some time with my family and just kind of talk through it, through everything, because it was just a lot to take in. And so when I returned home, I was scared and nervous, but the blessing is that I had an awesome line manager that when I told her my initial, because I didn't have to tell her my diagnosis by any stretch of the imagination, but I did share with her, and she basically told me, because I thought that I would lose my job because I wasn't sure what treatment was going to look like, what surgery was going to look like. And she literally told me, she said, don't worry about your job. I got your job. You worry about getting well. And when I tell you that she meant it and she held firm to every word that she said. And I'm thankful for her for that. And so January the 14th, I began chemotherapy. I did 4 rounds of the AC, affectionately known as the Red Devil. And when I tell you that those treatments are what took me out, I would literally have those treatments and I'd have like a day of false energy, like immediately after it. But then afterwards, it was just literally like going completely downhill. I remember my first treatment that I would typically have treatments on Friday. So I had a Saturday of sort of false energy, and my family had come in town, and we were up and they're helping me do stuff and taking down the Christmas tree and stuff like that. And so that next day, I remember, I think I slept 20 hours out of the day, and I got up to go to the bathroom, maybe a couple times. My appetite was, just very poor. And that sort of feeling would last for about 3 to 5 days thereafter. And then once you kind of got past it, then you were fine. But then by the time you got ready to start feeling yourself again, it's time for another treatment. So had 4 rounds of that. I was blessed during each one of those difficult periods. I had family or friends that would come and literally stay with me to make sure that I was okay. And then the last 12 treatments were with a drug called Taxol. And the Taxol, everyone said, oh, you'll start getting your energy back. One person was like, oh, I started working out. When I was taking Taxol, I literally start falling apart worse than when I was taking the AC, to a point where I was having heart palpitations, which landed me in the hospital on Mother's Day. And I stayed in the hospital for a week. I started having hot flashes. So that was not even cool at all. So literally there's a fan or a portable fan in every room of my house in my purse, car, and everywhere else that I go. And I made it through though. On June the 10th, I got a chance to ring the bell, and it was such an overwhelming experience for me. It was so funny because our section president for Jacksonville Section National Council of Negro Women at the time, she had offered to take me to my last treatment, and I just texted her on that morning of, and I was like, oh, I don't need you to take me today. I have arrived, but thank you. And I, just mentioned about it being my last treatment. She's like, oh, you get to ring the bell. And so somehow it sort of turned into like a celebration. And I honestly hadn't planned on it being that. And so I ended up like creating a Zoom link, and a couple of people that were actually there present that had sat with me during chemo that day, they shared the Zoom, and we had probably about a good 24 people that participated in, just to watch me ring the bell. And I even still have my certificate. And so after ringing the bell, went back, to the surgeons. I'm like, okay, did this chemo thing. You told me you were going to take the tumors out. Let's go. And they were like, oh, well, let's hold up. And then I was told that, to remove the tumors, that was a standard of care to prevent the spread. My cancer's already spread. And so, again, the Charlie Brown teacher sort of scenario came over, and I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to remove it? It's cancer, get it out. To a point where the liver doctor, the liver cancer doctor, I literally had to call him back and apologize because I acted very ugly in his office that day. And, he accepted my apology, and I just told him, I was like, I don't understand. I just feel like, because you're not on the other side of this, you don't understand what that means to me. And so we finally came up with a resolution that we would not do a liver surgery because it was going to be too invasive. But they did an ablation procedure where they actually burned the tumor off of my liver. And I had that done 2 days before my birthday. And it was a successful surgery. I've had some scans since then, and right now the only thing that remains is just sort of the cavity where the tumor was, but there's no cancer in my liver. From the chemotherapy, the cancer in my breast had shrank considerably to a point where it was the tumor was very superficial, so you could feel it. It was very palpable, and to a point where they could no longer feel the tumor. It was still there on imaging reports. And so right now, the tumor is still in my breast. I'm on oral chemotherapy and hormone suppressants. And we're planning for a surgery in January to remove the last bit of cancer. So with saying all that to say, thankful for everyone that has come along this crazy journey with me. Sometimes, I feel good, sometimes I feel bad. I'm one that I try to, just kind of keep moving. So I, try to continue to keep working. Again, I was blessed to be able to work from home. The entire time my company took me off the road, and they put me in a different position, which was actually, kind of a cool thing. They actually sort of created a new position. So it was a good thing for me. So shout outs to PPD, Thermo Fisher Scientific, for for being true, and for my line manager, Naja Hines. Again, I'm just thankful for everybody that, has walked with me, listened to me cry, encouraged me along the way. It's been, difficult because, I'm still going through it and trying to figure out, how do I advocate for others, or how do I help others to advocate? And again, I'm still trying to figure out, what that looks like for me. But I do know that I want to do something to help others that will have to face this battle.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. And your testimony is definitely going to help someone. So just rest assured that you're definitely already on the right path with that. And thank you for sharing your story and your strength, because it takes a lot of courage to share your story. All three of you have powerful testimonies. And so we just thank you for taking the time to share that, because you never know who you're helping, or who really needed that word or that support, that reminder. So thank you so much. And the gentleman on the panel, good evening. Thank you again for joining us. And if you want, you have about 10, 15 minutes so you can share your story as well.
Sure, I'm going to truncate mine because I really want to get to the questions and hear from folks. So good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Scott Blackman. I'm honored to be a part of the panel. I would like to thank the NCNW for asking me to be a part of the panel and kind of share a little bit about my journey. So the important part of what I want everyone to remember tonight is that people often suffer in silence. And I swore when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer that I would become an advocate to try to help other men. So if you are someone that has a loved one in your life, or has a brother, an uncle, a husband, a significant other, just know that they may be going through this and they'll suffer in silence. So once again, I'm Larry Scott Blackman. I have my own political consulting firm, PR firm, the Blackman Organization. We do a number of different things. I'm very active in my community. I can go, if I spend time going through my background, we'll be here all night, but I can tell you I'm a proud alpha man. I'm the Alumni Brother of the Year. I'm on 100 Black Men's board. You name it, I'm probably doing it. Quickly, in 2021, in March, I go for a physical every year, and I went for a physical, and my PSA number, simple blood test, my PSA number came back a little bit elevated. And I am within the last year to 2 years, I became a bike rider, and I do long rides. The longest ride I did was 40 miles from New York to the Tappan Zee Bridge in Jersey and back. And so I thought that perhaps by sitting on the throne, if you will, on the bike for all those miles, that my prostate was just infected or swollen. And so the doctor said, well, we need to check. And he told me to turn around. And I'm like, okay. And I was kind of like earthquake. He said, put this gown on. And I'm like, but doctor, the gown won't close in the front. What is this? And he said, no, you have it on backwards. So I'm like, well, what are you planning to do with that knuckle? Because you look like a football player. To me, you look like you got a Super Bowl ring. Those knuckles, what's going on here? And so I wound up being tested, and he asked me if I had cancer in my family. My grandmother had uterine cancer. And so, and unfortunately, she passed in 2014. So, that started a journey. And I went through a number of different doctors. I saw one of the top urologists at Mount Sinai, and he kind of walked some things through with me. And he said, we're just going to eliminate the boxes. We're going to see if we can check off the boxes and eliminate certain things. Did that journey. And through that journey, found out that I had early stage prostate cancer, which, is when you hear that, the first thing you think about, which everyone can relate to, is your own mortality. And you start putting things in perspective, and you start to say, how much time do I have left, right? But there's one person that knows how much time. We don't know, nor are we in control of it, right? So you become very spiritual quickly. And my brother's girlfriend had breast cancer, and he told me, call Memorial Sloan Kettering, right? Like Dr. Rashad said. So I called Memorial Sloan Kettering. I send the information to them, and I have a doctor there, and the first thing he says to me is, "You are going to be cured." That was the first thing he said. And the second thing he said is, "My job is not to kill you in the process." And I said, "Well, doctor, that's more important to me because you can cure me and kill me, right?" So come to find out, I'm also vice president of Fresh Direct, and I run all of their public affairs. Lo and behold, the top attorney at Fresh Direct, his wife is one of the top radiologists at Memorial Sloan Kettering. So the next message I'm going to leave you with is 3 words: standard of care. Standard of care is extremely important, because just knowing that my friend who I shared an office with for 4 years, and I didn't know that his wife was one of the top radiologists at Memorial Kettering, that changed my standard of care, which for Black men is something that is not always thought about or at the level it should be. That changed everything. When I was actually at my fraternity's general convention in Indianapolis, right after I won Alumni Brother of the Year for the fraternity, she scheduled a call with me the next day in the hallway of the convention center, a telecall, and that started the journey. In November, I was treated. I received brachytherapy, and I came to. She told me that I was the model. If she wanted a candidate, a person to work on, I was it. And I have not had any side effects other than a little bit of fatigue. But God is so good. And I said I would become an advocate because the doctors told me they're seeing more and more Black men, younger like me, coming in with issues related to prostate cancer and cancer. So I'm a part of the NFL's Crucial Catch campaign now. If you watch NFL games on Sunday, they talk about Crucial Catch. You see commercial and you see my big forehead there. I'm proud to have a forehead to help save lives. And what I would say to everyone is that, again, I have given speeches on this, and men have walked up to me and said, "Brother Blackman, I have not told my family, but I am going through prostate cancer. I have not told, how do you do it?" I've had men call, I've had men cry, I've dealt with it all. And just know that there are solutions, right? Modern technology, today's where we are, you can pop a pill and you're almost cured, right? But just know that through God's mercy, prayer, your family, your loved ones, you can overcome it. And to all of you that have men in your life, I encourage you to encourage them to find a support group to talk about it and to know your PSA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blackman, and thank you for sharing your experience and your journey as well. And to kind of follow back on what you were saying about the younger men, we're seeing a lot of younger women being diagnosed with breast cancer as well. I know a few women in their early 30s with no breast cancer history in their family. I've met a few men before that have had the same kind of pattern. There's no history in their family, yet they're young and going through this. But before we go to the general questions, I want to ask you all, what do you think are some of what misconceptions do you think maybe you had before your diagnosis that maybe after going through what you went through, you realized it was a misconception maybe?
I guess I'll jump in and just say the biggest misconception is that it can't happen to me.
That was that's the same thing I was thinking, because I do remember when I first spoke to my doctor, she was giving me all of this advice that was really non-applicable. She's like, "Okay, so we need you to exercise." I'm like, "I exercise every day." "We need you not, watch and maintain your weight." I walk 5 miles almost every other day, and I'm the epitome of great health. "I need you not to drink alcohol." I've never taken an alcoholic drink in my entire life. "And we don't want you to smoke." I've never had a cigarette before. So basically, You don't know what's killing me, is what I was telling her, you know? So, I always tell people that medicine is just a practice. Do they really know what they're doing? I mean, it's just them doing things over and over and over again that somehow work. And they don't really have all of the answers. So God was a big part of this. I prayed all the time. And every morning I would wake up. And what I did realize was that my support system, they were more afraid than I was. And I found myself every day texting about a group of 25 people in one group text about, here's today's 2 cents. I'm going to need you to do this, that, and the other thing. Hang in there. If your eyes are open, you got this thing half figured out and half beat. If you're standing on your feet, you're winning. Every day I would have to come up with some kind of motivational something to say for the people who were actually there to support me. So yeah, that's crucial. How did this happen to me? You all say that.
I think I could definitely agree. And with that said, just to sort of underscore what Sister Shara said about the fact that so many more women and younger are being affected by this disease. And so you can't take for granted that you're young. You can't take for granted that no one in your family has a history of cancer. You have to stay on top of your annual diagnostic exams. Please go get mammograms. And I literally beat myself up for I don't know how long because I work in the medical profession and I just opted not to get one. And so I will say that, with that being, the biggest misconception that, oh, it can't happen to me, it can really happen to you. It can really happen to you with no history of cancer in your family. It can happen to you if you're doing everything that you're supposed to do. So the only way that you can know is to go often and go early, so that the earlier that they find it, the better off that your chances are.
And with that being said, you all mentioned, this can't happen to me. And the thing is, how did you process that once you received your diagnosis? How did you process that journey of accepting it and moving forward with your care? Because that couldn't have been easy.
I feel like a lot of the situations that Dr. Rashad shared, I experienced those same things. So early in my diagnosis, when I would go to the doctor, I would literally have to have someone else there with me because I would shut down. And it would take me 2 or 3 days after the visit to just sort of process the information. How I'm feeling about this, and okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to act? And it's not that I'm not intelligent. I have a doctorate degree. I wrote a whole dissertation. I can do this. I know how to process medical information, but how do you process your own medical information? No one teaches you how to do that. No, there's no correct way. There's no instruction book. There's nothing that I could Google to find to tell me how to do that. So I'm thankful for my support system that, took off work. I even had one of my good girlfriends, she would drive down from Tallahassee to take me to doctor's appointments and leave her family and drive 2 hours to Jacksonville to take me to doctor's appointments. So I am very grateful and thankful for those individuals, that helped me with my processing, because like I said, it's gonna look different for everybody.
So I guess I'll jump in here. I'm still processing. to be honest with you. I'm like an old Microsoft DOS computer. I'm still buffering on this particular topic. Like my buffering meter is still going. Because you think about it every day. It's not something that you just say, you know, okay, I dealt with it. You can, you know, it's weird. It's like any little thing, it causes you to listen to your body more. And so because of that, I can't speak for anyone else. I'm just still in disbelief. You know, it's like, wait a minute, I did that. You know, that happened. So you still process it. It's an ongoing piece.
What advice would you give people that are going through it, or maybe, well, I'll just be transparent. I just turned 40 last year, and I was not going to get a mammogram. And my gynecologist apparently put a reference in to a local doctor, and I received a call to get my mammogram. But I will say, what I tell a lot of women my age, I wish it wasn't that stigma of that fear of getting an exam and getting checked out every year, because when I got the results back and it was negative, it was like this big weight was off my shoulder. I'm like, well, what was I scared of? And so what advice would you give for people like me that's trying to avoid getting that answer?
Well, I'd like to answer that. You had a big weight fall off of your shoulders because the truth is, I'm just going to hit you with a few statistics. In USA Today for 2022, there's going to be an estimate of 287,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer. So you should be afraid, but not afraid. You should be afraid not to check yourself out. Okay, and of those cases, they're going to be 43,000 that will die from it because they choose not to be proactive, right? And those who do choose to go, they'll be a little too late. And those who do go on time, guess what? A few of them won't make it even. So yeah, you should be afraid not to be proactive, is what I'm saying. And then there'll be another 51,000 cases in DCIS type of a cancer. Okay, and then approximately 2,700 cases of new cases and 530 deaths that are going to be men. So you should be afraid not to act. So that should be your fear, not to act. And I'm so happy and proud of you that you decided to go forward. I tell women all the time, the day you have to go to your mammogram appointment, it's going to be 50 below zero or possibly snowing that day. You're not going to feel like going. But, you know, this thing is so detrimental. You need to feel like getting up, and you better go, because it'll be that day when it's pouring rain and your turn that something can be missed. And we just don't want that to happen to you or anyone, sis.
Well, I won't take credit for that. My doctor just went ahead and did it without me knowing, because I'm friends with her. And she did tell me that she sees a lot of women my age and younger that try to avoid that. And so what I've been telling people, that women that I know that are coming up to that age of 40 that need to go get it checked, they're always like, well, it's going to hurt. Now it is uncomfortable, but I mean, you'll be fine. You know, because it's better to go through those few seconds of discomfort and know, versus not knowing and just living in that fear. And I'm very thankful in my situation. My doctor knew me well enough to say, you know, I'm just gonna go ahead and send a referral. And the hospital called me and was like, okay, when you coming in? When's your availability? So I know everyone doesn't have that support system like that. But before we go on, I want to make sure, see if there were any questions from those that are viewing the webinar. I know we have 174 participants on right now.
Yes, we do have some questions. The first one is, With all the donations that have been made toward breast cancer, is there a near cure or improvement? And I assume this one is for Dr. Stanford.
So there's always active research going on. And because of the specificity of cancer, it sometimes is difficult to get into clinical trials that you may qualify for. That was the first option that I turned to when I got my diagnosis, because I was like, there has to be, something else that's going on. There's a lot of really awesome research that is going on now. But, because of the specificity of it, you may or may not qualify for some of those trials. But I can tell you that clinical research is slow to move. It is about a 10-year period from between when a drug goes to clinical trial, or when it's, from the bench side, where it's formulated in an actual laboratory until it is brought to market. It's an extremely expensive process, so it's not gonna move slowly. It's like turning a ship. But with that being said, even though it moves slowly, it will move. And so, to just, be encouraged that, there are doctors and there are people that are advocates out there that are working in the background to make life better for those that are diagnosed. I can tell you now that the treatments and therapies that are available now are far better than the treatments that were available just 10 years ago, which has helped to increase the quality of life for many that were diagnosed. So with that being said, you just have to kind of just hold on and just wait for science to come, and just, continue to advocate, continue to donate, and continue to, keep fighting in the background.
And can I also say that, with all of that, all women are not benefiting equally from these advancements and from the researches, because there are just striking disparities in the way we are treated, and it's truly a black and white issue. So, a lot of times Black women don't get early enough detection. We always get diagnosed later on in the game. Sometimes there are financial things that keep us from participating, geographic isolation, the inability to get to a place. All of these things play a role in the research and the advancements, say, just particularly for Black women. There are not enough of us who are willing to be a guinea pig because of certain situations that have happened in our history. And so these things also play a role.
Yes, and if I could just underscore the fact that the need for more diversity in clinical research definitely exists, especially among minorities and women. Not only for, cancer research, but just research in general across the board. So I know that there's always some fear, of things going wrong because of historical events that have taken place. But you lose out on 100% of the opportunities that you don't go for. So, you don't know how it will turn out, in situations where the studies are double blind, where you could get a placebo, but you could very well get the treatment. And it could, put you in a good, a better or improved health status. So I just, encourage anyone that, has an opportunity to participate in clinical research to please do so.
Thank you, Dr. Rashad. Thank you, Dr. Stanford. We still have a few more questions. This one's for Mr. Blackman. What were the signs of early stage prostate cancer?
I had no signs whatsoever. I had no signs whatsoever. I was living life to the fullest. So the PSA was the one that elevated PSA number is the key. And there was something that was said earlier that I wanted to just go back to real quick. And Ms. Denton said it. You know, what about being scared? What triggered me? I'm going to leave you with two names: the Kango Kid and Chadwick Boseman, because Chadwick Boseman and I are the same age. So when he passed of colon cancer, and the Kango Kid from the group UTFO, who was a friend of mine, passed from colon cancer, that triggered me, and I said, I want a colonoscopy. I want it all. I want to know everything. And it was me being proactive that found that PSA number being elevated and started that journey, but no symptoms whatsoever.
Wow. There's actually another one for you, Mr. Blackman. It's asking if you had any radiation during your treatment.
Yes, I had brachytherapy. And brachytherapy in and of itself is radiation treatment. Those are radiation implants that are put in the prostate to target the cancerous cells. And yes, so yes, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. This one looks like it's for everyone. What was the financial cost involved?
I remember looking at my medical bill, just being very fortunate that the majority of it was covered. And I also am a retired Army officer, and a lot of it was absorbed through my VA medical benefits. But I did receive a bill, and I saw $999,000 on after everything was said and done. And that was on after, I guess, 2 years of treatment. That was like the first bill I had ever received. And I thank God I didn't really have to pay that. But yeah, it's really expensive. I remember taking a shot called, I believe it was Neulasta, and the shot itself, they told me it was about, I don't know, I want to say $1,500 per vial or something like that. I can't remember the exact cost, but one vial after chemo was required, and it was about a $1,500 vial of medication that I would have to take after every chemo session. So it was very expensive, not to mention the travel, the room and board time situations. I live in Pennsylvania. My hospital was in New York. So sometimes I just didn't have enough energy to come home. So we would end up staying in a hotel overnight. It can be very expensive, whereas the prevention portion seems expensive. It's a whole lot less expensive than what it costs to treat it, especially if you catch it early. And don't be fooled. I am not even finished the surgical process. I have another surgery to go and a few other tweaks. I don't even know if I really want to do that, because right now my mind is good, and I'm healthy, and I'm disease free. And so the other thing would just be an aesthetic thing. I'm not even sure that I will finish, but you know, I'm in no rush. I have a few years before I would have to make that crucial decision.
I think I remember having similar sort of sticker shock when receiving just one bill from one of my chemotherapy treatments and saw that it was over $40,000 just for one chemotherapy treatment. And I had to kind of like put that in perspective that, you know, for someone, that is someone's annual salary, right? So if you put that in perspective, that a person would have to work every day for a year in order to afford a treatment, one treatment no less. So that's work every day for a year. That's not eat anything. That's not buy any clothes, no shelter, no transportation, nothing. And, you know, just being or feeling really blessed that I did have, you know, adequate health insurance.
And so for me, Mount Sinai didn't take the insurance that I had at the time. And because it was a referral from someone he knew, the first visit was $500 and every other visit was $1,000 out of pocket. About the fifth visit, I grabbed a Newport and said, look, I ain't got it. It was one of those deals. I don't have it. But thankfully, and all jokes aside, because you have to laugh about some of this, right? You have to have a sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor about it, you will be, in some respects, on a very depressing road. So thankfully, Memorial Sloan Kettering, the great hospital that it is, did take my insurance. And I still owe them money. So my name is, you know, changed for purposes of tonight's program. They're looking for a brother. They may be outside my office right now.
Maybe I'll go look.
I thought Obama took care of this for Black men. I'm joking. Where's Obamacare?
Do we have any more questions from the chat?
Yes, we have quite a few questions tonight. Thank you everyone for being so engaged. This is such an important conversation. This question is for Mr. Blackman. How do you encourage men to be comfortable with getting their prostates checked?
One of the ways that I try to encourage them is, one, obviously sharing my story, but two, letting them know that, look, I think that there are other men around them who are going through it. I had one of my frat brothers called me when I went public with it. One of my frat brothers called me and said, Brother Blackman, I'm really angry with you that you did not tell me about this, because I had 90 seeds implanted. And this brother's somewhat, you know, overweight, and removal of his prostate was life-threatening. So they gave him the maximum number of seeds possible, and he's doing great. I've had other men that I've talked to, and so how do I make people comfortable? As I share with them different options and different stories that other men have told me about their specific journey and how they're still living, whether it was someone that had prostate cancer 30 years ago and the surgery was a little bit more invasive than it is today, or talking to them and saying, look, if you go see a radiologist, they're going to tell you to treat it with radiation. If you go see a surgeon, they're going to tell you to cut it out. You have to make the best decision and base it on the data and the facts. And I walked them through that journey as well, right? What's important to a man is their ability to be a man after they are treated for prostate cancer. And, you know, I'm thrilled, you know what I mean? Like, I am the best. I finished my procedure and told my my doctor, look, I'm your advocate, and I know you're happy if you're telling me I'm a model citizen. That means you've never seen an ass like mine. And she thought that was the funniest thing in the world. So you have to talk to men in a way to make them feel that their manhood will not be sacrificed on this journey. That is the #1 issue for men.
And then there's a counterpart to that question. What advice would you give women who are reluctant to participate in research trials for exploratory treatment of breast cancer?
Again, I think I mentioned it before, you missed out on 100% of the opportunities that you don't take. And so don't let fear be the stand between you and your ability to potentially improve your health. You know, people will tell you a lot of things. I was told a lot of things like during my treatment, and I was given a lot of advice about different ways to, you know, do different things holistically. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I felt more comfortable following the medical advice of my licensed physician, my board certified licensed physician. And not knocking, you know, any sort of holistic treatments or anything that's available out there, because I do know and I've read a lot about them, so much so that a lot of times I would take some of that information to my doctor and like, no, you can't do that because it'll interact with your chemo. So, you know, it was, so some things you have to, you know, curtail back on, but, you know, any opportunity that you can take to improve your lifestyle, then do so. But again, with the research, because minority, especially Black women, are so underrepresented in it, in those studies, you know, it would behoove you to, you know, go and find out if there are studies that are available for your specific disease state. There's clinicaltrials.gov. You can literally go in and, you know, search and with your disease, your specific disease state, and to find out if there are trials that are open that you might be able to join. Talk to your providers about it. If you are receiving treatment at a large research intensive institution, or even not, still just talk with your provider, because they may have information about open trials that they might be actively recruiting for. But for some reason, African American women are not a lot of times offered those same opportunities. So I just, and I believe that I mentioned it earlier, that, you know, in this journey, you have to be your own best advocate. You can't leave this in the hands of somebody else, because this is your life in the balance.
And
Agreed.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said agreed.
We have a couple more questions. Is there any safeguard that can protect you from the side effects of radiation?
Well, this all goes back to requesting what you know is good and entering into certain researches. When I was about to start my radiation, of course, I went into straight research mode, and I found a different type of radiation that wasn't as destructive as the normal run-of-the-day radiation that everyone else was receiving, and it was called proton therapy. Now, what proton therapy can do is directly hit the target without bypassing the boundary. And because my tumor was in my breast, it was right next to my heart. So there was a lot of noise about me potentially having heart problems and heart issues after radiation. But after I found out what I learned about proton therapy, I started advocating for myself. I want proton radiation therapy. I hear that they can hit it right on the spot without penetrating and affecting my heart. And I actually had that therapy, and I have a strong beating heart with no current defects. So what did radiation do? My last dose, I received some blistering, but it immediately healed after that. Nothing long lasting.
And we've got,
Well, I guess I'll jump in. For the prostate cancer, yes, there are certain things that the doctors, certain plans that they give you in regimens in advance that would protect certain functions prior to receiving the radiation treatment. And it also depends on which treatment you get, because you will hear about brachytherapy, CyberKnife, there's certain other types as well, and different things that they do to protect the side effect, because Dr. Rashad said it best. Radiation can leak to other healthy organs in the area. So there are steps that they can take, that doctors will advise to protect certain functions given radiation.
thank you for that, Mr. Blackman. We got one more, and the question is, it's about self-examining when you have breast cancer between mammograms. How important is that to do?
Very. I'll go ahead and take that question. Very. That was how I found my cancer. I actually found the lump myself. So you know your body, best. You shower with it. You're with it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's important to touch yourself. I mean, and to be able to do those self-examinations if something doesn't feel right. You know how your body feels. And don't be afraid to, voice those concerns. A lot of times I would just sort of marginalize symptoms and things that I was having, hence the late diagnosis for myself. I felt my my lump in February of 2021, but did not go to have it investigated until September of 2021. So, it's not enough to only, have, to perform those self-examinations, but to act on them.
Well, after having a double mastectomy, I'm no longer required to do mammograms every year. However, I still breast examine. Although my implants were inserted underneath the pectoralis muscles, where your breasts are generally located on top, if anything were to crop up or recur, it would be on top of the muscle. And so I always run my hands over my chest, even though these are not real breasts, just to make sure there are no changes in my tissues or my muscles or under my arms. Again, if you have a significant other or spouse, I was told by my doctor that oftentimes husbands find it faster than the person who actually has a tumor. Touch yourself is all I can say.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Rashad. That is all of the questions that we have from the audience.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, I know we've been here for a minute, but you guys have been providing some I'm getting text messages as this is going on. People want to ask more and more questions. But what words of advice would each of you provide to those kind of in limbo about their diagnosis or even checking for some type of cancer?
After diagnosis, you're saying? Well, number one, you have to choose which side you're on. I chose life. Day one, I'm a fighter, and I honestly believe that I was prepared for this position way before it happened. As a retired Army officer, if there's anything I know how to do, I know how to fight. This time I was given the opportunity to fight for myself. So number one, you have to choose life. Number two, people who can't say good things should be eliminated from your equation right away. The last thing you need is someone casting doubt. Get rid of the doubt so that you can live and choose life. And just be mindful and do your own research. And if it doesn't sound right and it doesn't feel right, oftentimes it isn't right. Say something. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your friends. Someone will find an answer for you.
Again, I just want to underscore, Dr. Rashad, you have to be your own best advocate. So after your diagnosis, take a day, take two, but then you have to act. You have to, find out what is going to be the best course of action, the best course of treatment for you. Also, make sure that you identify competent medical professionals that will partner with you in your healing process. I can't say that enough. Had I not just, looked for a different surgeon because I did not feel comfortable with that surgeon, I could potentially be dead. So I thank God for discernment. And as Dr. Rashad said, if it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not. Act on your intuition and advocate for yourself. And again, if something doesn't feel right with you, don't be silent about it. Make sure that you bring it to someone's attention and make sure that they fully investigate whatever it is. Don't allow people to blow you or your symptoms off.
My message to everyone would be, around your health, use the relationships that you have and the networks that you belong to your advantage. There should not be a price tag on your health. And I can tell you, I exhausted probably not every, because I have a lot of them, but relationships. Many of you may be in Jack and Jill, Divine Nine organization. You're in the NCNW, obviously. Use your relationships to get second opinions, to exhaust as many channels as you can to protect yourself. You feel something funny, talk to someone, call your soror, call your sister. Hey, do you know somebody that can come, that can see me, that can get me in, that can put me in front of the line? I can't stress it enough. I think in the Black community, we need to talk about standard of care, because more often than not, our standard of care is substandard and it costs us lives.
Well, thank you
And
all.
I'll close by saying, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're honored to have all three of you here. And thank you again for sharing your testimony. And I want to just make a note to those that are still on that we will be doing a video recognition of our NCNW members who are survivors and current currently going through breast cancer right now. So please be on the lookout for that in the next week or so. But we want to thank you for your time. I know it's different time zones for many of us, but to the speakers, thank you so much. And we just appreciate all that you guys are doing to spread the words and using your testimony to help others. One thing my mentor, Dr. Cole, has told me before is you just never know who's paying attention to you. So you sharing your story is helping somebody. So thank you all so much.
So I wanted to I have a cell phone that I use. I'm going to give my number. Someone is actually going through, I will answer it. We can talk, no problem. There are going to be times that once you're diagnosed, you'll wake up at 2:32 in the morning for no good reason because you cannot sleep and you just need your question answered. Feel free to call me. My number is 570-369-6886. That's all.
Thank you. And again, that's it for this webinar, but we will have plenty others, and hopefully you all will be back for us in the future for other events as well. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.